Most people do not know that in 1938, the entire court system in America changed. Before 1938, we had common law courts, courts of record, courts where juries had the final word, courts where statutes could not override natural rights. But in 1938, under the federal rules of civil procedure, something happened. Law and equity were merged. The court switched from common law to equity, and that shift changed everything. Equity is not about rights. Equity is about regulation. Equity is about contracts. Equity is about making parties follow rules created by artificial entities. Equity is the system that corporations prefer. Because equity allows contracts to override constitutional rights. This is why most cases today never reach a jury. This is why judges act as administrators instead of judges. This is why corporate lawyers dominate the courtroom. This is why rights are ignored while procedures are enforced. Now here is the connection. A corporation is an artificial entity. It exists only by statute. Equity courts were created to manage artificial entities. This is why corporations act as if they have authority. This is why they believe they can interpret contracts. This is why they believe they can deny claims. And this is why they believe they can use attorneys to enforce those denials. But the problem is simple. Equity courts do not give corporations the right to practice law. Equity courts do not give corporations the power to interpret statutes. Equity courts do not give corporations the power to override constitutional protections. And equity courts do not give corporations the power to make legal decisions that bind the public. The 1938 shift created the illusion that corporations were on equal footing with the people. But that illusion falls apart when you apply the maxims of law. It falls apart when you apply the clear limits of corporate authority. It falls apart when you recognize that unauthorized practice of law voids every act the corporation performs. And it falls apart now that the Chevron doctrine is gone. Chevron allowed agencies to interpret vague rules. Equity courts allowed corporations to behave like agencies. But that era is over. Courts cannot defer to agencies. Courts cannot defer to corporations. Courts cannot enforce void acts, and courts cannot revive anything that was unlawful from the beginning. This is why the shift in 1938 matters today. It explains how corporations gained power. It explains how courts became administrative. And it explains how the people were moved out of common law and into commercial jurisdiction. But it also shows how to take that power back. Challenge jurisdiction. Challenge unauthorized practice of law. Challenge void acts. Challenge corporate interpretations. And bring the court back into the proper role. A court of record, a court governed by the people, a court that applies the law as written, not as invented. This is the foundation for restoring due process. This is how you expose fraud, and this is how you win.